I felt one, it was a movement that was waiting to happen in our environment. It was very needed. It's a very important and a significant moment in, I think, gender relations. And one of the outcomes has been to create a kind of male introspection. Like this happened for a very long time. Number one. Number two, having said all those things, I also found that the discourse that was created with Me Too India was unlike, say, Me Too America, where a lot of criticism of Me Too America also happened, and that's what needed to happen here too. Why? Primarily because if we have to move ahead, then those conversations have to happen. The Me Too India can't only be about the next celebrity being outed. It cannot be that, and it can't be limited to just that. It's about a wide ranging conversation that has to take place over sexual relations, gender norms, patriarchy, all kinds of things through which men and women relate to each other at home, in the workspace, in offices, in institutions, at schools, colleges, etc. So it's a much bigger conversation that needs to happen, and for that much bigger conversation to happen, even the feminists who've been leading Me Too India in a certain direction have to have their arguments being challenged, and they have to allow for the conversation to be widened. So my set of pieces, and I've written now I think around 6-7 articles on Me Too India, which have looked at different kinds of elements, different kinds of silences in the movement, which have been very bothered about. And where I'm saying silences, I'm criticizing both the female feminists who've led it and the male feminists who've led it. And I mean, people across the spectrum who've not been able to make the wider conversation happen. That's the first point. The second point that I found was also because this was run through the social media in India, and the social media had set its agenda, and then Indian journalism took over. That itself is a big problem, and I've made that point in one of my pieces, that shows how lacking Indian journalism has been, mainstream Indian journalism has been. Whereas in the United States, it was the New Yorker and the New York Times that set the agenda, and then social media followed, and then it hasn't stopped. You see, there's been a long conversation that is taking place with all its problems in place, and that kind of conversation we need. In India, unfortunately, what happened was the social media set up the agenda, and then the mainstream media got into it, and then once the social media found that the idea was off the news cycle, then even the mainstream media took a back step. That's a problem. It also tells you how short-lived and how short-sighted Indian journalism has become, and increasingly it's just progressively getting worse. And that's primarily because there is no approach towards having a complex conversation towards complex phenomena, which is very, very badly needed, especially in the Indian environment. Apart from all these things, apart from many of the kinds of things that emerged with Me Too India, I also found some kinds of argumentative and logical fallacies. There was a big question over, say, how how sexism prevails in Indian culture, what goes into the making of the sexism, why is it that to a great extent we find issues of sexual harassment so common, and what does it point to in terms of Indian society and its framing of sexuality, its framing of how sex has to take place, sexual frustration. Very, very important questions which I thought were not being discussed. Very fundamental questions. So that has been my long engagement with Me Too India. In fact, I think it's never going to stop, because these are universal questions, and that's what as a person who's teaching here, yes, but also as a person who's been a journalist in the past, I still continue doing journalism now, and I'm also have been writing a series of essays on this topic. I think this is a topic of never-ending importance. There's so much for us to learn as Indians from from the critical approaches towards Me Too in the United States, in the Scandinavian countries, in South Korea, other places, and what to do in terms of sex education at the school level, at the college level. Big issues over which we need like a public conversation which goes on, not only in the English media but across many other languages. So these are some of the things that I've been very interested in. A larger philosophical question that has emerged in my mind, and this is going to be most probably my next essay, might be a longer one, is on when did the idea of sex become a form of power and power abuse between individuals. That itself is how has that been framed through the history of mankind, and it has happened in not just Indian society, in many other societies, as we know. So these are a set of questions I find which have emerged, which have not been tackled, which have not been probed. These are things which we need to bring to the forefront and discuss them openly and freely. And to most importantly with Me Too now is still a great opportunity for us as a society, between men and women and people of all genders, to create a climate where we are having an open, honest conversation and bringing our biases to the table, so that we at least become aware of those biases, aware of our blind spots, aware of what we don't know about each other, aware of how to create a more equitable environment, a better environment, and also I will also say a sexually more happy environment.